We're on Thomas Arnold, and this is the third section, and this is going to be on the legacy of Thomas Arnold. Welcome back to the Agon Institute's instructional video series, and we're in our third segment about Thomas Arnold, headmaster at Rugby School. And we are in this 21st century models for sports ministry course, and in this course we're trying to share some models and some examples of past folks who have integrated faith and sport and done ministry around sport, and all as a platform for you as a student to envision your 21st century sports ministry models. Thomas Arnold, as we've said, was a headmaster in the early to mid 1800s in England, premier educational mind that he had and the concepts that he developed. And we've talked a little bit about maybe someone taking this course is going to think about now moving into the Christian school movement as a model for 21st century sports ministry. We've talked about how important it is to be a mentor. And we're going to talk today a little bit more about this legacy of Arnold, the Arnoldian legacy. And so if you pick up your PowerPoint notes, you'll see a picture there of the rugby pitch. Now in America, we would call it a field. In England, we would call it a pitch, but it's the same thing. And this is where William Webb picked up the soccer ball because he couldn't kick it fast enough to get it away from all those who were pursuing him. He picked it up and ran, and the game of rugby evolved. Again, this was not a school where you went to learn how to play rugby, but rather that the sport of rugby emerged out of a culture and an ethic that Thomas Arnold had created. Now, in my mind, Stuart Weir, a colleague and good friend, is one of the premier thinkers and understanding the muscular Christianity, the Christian aspects of the muscular Christianity movement in England. Now he does not think that he's quite that of an expert, but he is, and I think that he's right when he says that Thomas Arnold did not invent the game of rugby. No, I would agree there that he did not invent the game of rugby. But what I would say is that he, rather than inventing it, he actually enabled it. Because he created a culture, he created an environment in which these kinds of things were so important and could come to fruition. And so while I don't think he actually created a game, he created the environment in which the game could be created. Now, he was a pioneer, Arnold was. He was a pioneer of using athletics to accomplish spiritual ends. He understood this. But I think that my assessment of this is that Arnold gave it too much credit. You see, whereas this theory of participation, this theory later became called the recapitulation theory. We'll study that later in the course. This theory of participating in sports equals and equates and assures moral virtue in the participants. I just don't think we can assume that. I don't assume that at all that that's true. Because I believe that moral perfection can only be accomplished when the activity is evaluated and processed through the Holy Scripture and with a mentor, a coach, a teacher, if you will. You see, Arnold and those that followed him thought, just get these young boys, and at that point it was only young men that participated, the cultural milieu of the day. They said, if we can just get them out there to play sport, they'll naturally become virtuous young men. This was very much patterned after the ancient Greek. Remember a couple weeks ago we studied this, that the Greek body, mind, and spirit was so much part of this. Well, this moral perfection just didn't happen. and it so rarely happened in the church over the next 50 years, that they actually discarded this whole theory. They wanted nothing to do with it. And in fact, the church had observed quite the opposite occurring, that sports brought out the worst in people. So you see, shortly after Thomas Arnold, and through the influence of Thomas Hughes' novels, many of the schools now were attempting to be modeled after the Tom Browns that came through the Thomas Hughes novels. Critics like the atheist Bertrand Russell complained, in fact, this was so much the part and parcel of what was going on, people like Russell complained so much that the schoolmasters were selected more for their athletic qualifications than for their academics or others. And so I think that what we have to recognize is that this did not happen automatically. But I think innately Arnold knew this. And in fact, what he really did teach then was that, well, not so much what he taught as much as how he lived and how he conducted himself as the headmaster of the school, was that the active life does teach about faith in the image of this classical Greek athletic theory, body, mind, and spirit. But that there are teachable moments that occur, and you need to be able to grab hold of those moments. Now, in your models, 21st century, are you actually creating opportunities for these teachable moments that you can grab hold of, the adult men in your sports leagues or your young people at a camp? You see this picture that comes out of the Tom Brown novel, where Tom Brown is one of the crewsmen in this crewing group that is crewing on the river there. And that, notice how the person standing in the river giving instructions and helping them out actually becomes that coach or that mentor, if you will. And so these teachable moments that came out of the Tom Brown novels are things like learn how to persevere to win, be coachable. So like this figure of the Tom Arnold in the Tom Brown novels that Tom Hughes wrote about, that's in this picture. This is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be right there with these models. How are we doing in our sports ministry today? Are you doing that? Let me finish his legacy by showing you the pictures on the next slide of Baron Pierre de Coubertin. And de Coubertin read the Tom Brown novels. Now, he was a self-avowed, self-declared atheist, and he never thought that we should do what Thomas Hughes was recommending in these Tom Brown novels that he learned from Thomas Arnold. But de Coubertin said, let's create a secular version of this, and therefore the modern-day Olympics. And you see him on the right side of the picture there as a young, muscular atheist, if you will. And then you see him with the original IOC, the International Olympic Committee. He believed that we could create a secular version of muscular Christianity, and that we could better the world through it, and that men could become more virtuous. Again, women didn't participate. And that men could change the world, that we could have peace in our time by bringing all these people together. And he kept much of the religious trappings of muscular Christianity, but without the innate faith. The athletes would have to recite a pledge, what they believe, like we would recite on a Sunday morning in a church our Apostles' Creed. He thought that if we could help the athletes to learn these lessons that they would learn in sport about life, that life could be better. So you see that even Arnold's legacy lives on today through the modern Olympic movement, but much more secular, obviously. Well, let's wrap this up. What are the models that we can really take away from Thomas Arnold that we can apply to 21st century models of sports ministry and sports outreach? Well, first of all, everyone does need a mentor. Lessons about faith and life are not automatic. And that we need these models of these role models that come and help us process what we're learning in our sports. How are you going to incorporate that in your sports ministry? And the second thing is these teachable moments. Maybe even try to create in your sports ministry those things that are going to cause stress, that are going to cause frustration, that are going to cause people to have to figure out what can they do and how is this going to be done according to my faith. I rather like what my colleague and professor at Azusa Pacific in sports ministry, Steve Quattro, has come upon in his book that we talk about intentional outreach. He calls them influence moments, moments of influence, or impact moments rather than teachable moments. And what he's talking about there is the influence and the impact that you can have for the gospel. And then how are you as 21st century practitioners learning from these models to also not just create teachable moments, but impact moments for the gospel? Think about these. Are you going to go into the Christian school movement? Are you going to become a coach, an athletic director? Are you going to, in your sports ministry, create these teachable moments, these impact moments? And how are you going to help others become mentors? All right. Next time, we're going to continue on in our journey in the early to mid 1800s and learn from a man by the name of George Williams about models that we can use today in the 21st century. I'm Dr. Greg Linville for the Agon Institute of Sports Ministry. Thanks for joining.